Welcome to Asentiv's The Art of Leveraging. I'm Tiffanie Kellog, your hostess, and I'm so very excited to be joined today by Jonathon Torres. Welcome, Jonathon. So glad to have you.
Hey, Tiffany, thank you so much. This is truly a privilege, and excited as always to be able to share my story.
Oh, okay. So we do want to know your story. But before we get into the story and how you got to where you are, at least tell us about your company. So Falkenberg Productions, tell me about that.
Yeah, Falkenberg Productions, it came about at like for some people at a very pivotal moment in my life. I was actually at a great job with Synapse. I was the marketing director for Synapse. For those who are not in the Tampa Bay area, it is a tech-centered, innovation-centered event that is put on every year at the arena here in Tampa, and they've now since expanded out to Orlando and some other markets to create, again, and attract innovative companies and startups and tech companies. But unfortunately, during my time there, I had a pretty scary, frightening car accident. Luckily, not too. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was certainly um, frightening in the sense that it involved an 18-wheeler
Oh,
and
wow.
myself in the middle of the night.
Oh,
Um, but we fortunately it was in Tampa. It was in town, so we were close to the hospital. Everything. I was able to get out of the vehicle, with minor injuries. Certainly, given again the gravity of what the damage done to the car, and but all that to say that when you're spending even 24 hours in a hospital, you certainly take that opportunity to reflect on life and the highs, the lows, and where life's headed. And what's next. And as happy as I was in the role that I was in, and at that point in my life, I felt that I needed to find what the next chapter was going to be. I needed to really kind of put together, what's in it for me, and what is it that I want to accomplish. Because I felt like I was falling into the same roles time and time again that I'd already been doing throughout my career. And I really wanted to challenge myself. And I've since childhood, I've had an entrepreneurial spirit, but knowing myself, I knew that it had to be something that I was passionate about. It had to be something that I loved doing, or just I wouldn't put in my fullest commitment to it. And so I broke down my entire career. I've been fortunate to have a variety of careers. Certainly
yeah,
more
I
than
have to say, I think you have more LinkedIn experiences and careers than anybody I have ever seen.
I've had a pretty full life. I've been incredibly blessed, and I would do it all over again if given the opportunity, because it has given me some amazing opportunities. It's put me in amazing places. I've met incredible people along the way, and really, Falkenberg Productions is a culmination of my entire career. I wanted to create content. I love production. I was in radio for a number of years, and I did a lot of audio production. That was really the foundation of my role in my radio career was audio production, and even before that, as a kid, from when the time I was 10 years old, I was the kid that played around with the big VHS camera at home and made music videos and film sporting events and things like that. And I probably used that camera more than my parents did. And so technology, and and timing for me was kind of the perfect storm to be able to put together a company like Falkenberg Productions. And my goal really is to make high quality content production affordable, accessible to nonprofits, small businesses, people that don't have, the big budgets. I've been fortunate to work with $1 million budgets and high-end video production projects, and where you're traveling across the country, and and it seems like everything's paid for. But I have a soft spot for the small business owner, for the nonprofits who need that type of service more than anyone, really, and oftentimes are left out because of the affordability aspect of it. And so, short form videos, podcasts, live streaming, was all, these are all kind of within the wheelhouse of Falkenberg Productions. And Crazy enough, I mean, to start a company right before COVID hit, actually ended up being the biggest blessing for my company, in its first 2-3 years, because as many know, everything went virtual, when
Yes.
COVID hit. And so there were a lot of organizations, schools, companies, nonprofits that needed live streaming. They needed content production, because you couldn't have crowds and audiences, and people couldn't attend events. I've done weddings, funerals. I mean, it's incredible, the demand that came out of what was really a standstill moment for our economy, and for many businesses. But luckily, being here in Florida, come March, April of 2020, things started to open back up, and I was literally at a wedding the week that Florida technically opened back up, when
Mm.
you could only have 10 people in a room, and so, here I am, live streaming a wedding, and it was basically the bride, the groom, the parents, and myself. um, but again, talking about doing something fulfilling, I mean, there's nothing more fulfilling than to, have a bride in tears tell you how, if it wasn't for you, like, her family would not have been able to be witness to their wedding.
Yeah.
And I had so much of that, in the years following, and even still, it's been remarkable, and that's what I love, is that, when you bring a product to those who need it most, there's just such an appreciation for the work that you do, that makes doing what you love that much better.
Yeah. So do you find that you are focused mainly on like the wedding, the funeral kind of stuff, mainly working with the business? I get you can probably work with a whole bunch of people, but what's kind of your sweet spot, the bread and butter of your business?
Sure. Well, I know one of the things that you want to, discuss, are some of the challenges, or leveraging, the some of the obstacles, and this is kind of where that comes into play. I love doing the live streaming, because one of the things I don't like, and I wanted my company to be representative of myself, really, what
Yeah.
I like to do and what I don't like to do, and I wanted to make sure that I did as little of what I don't like, and did as much of what I do like. And what I love about live streaming is that when it's live, and when it's done, it's done. There's no editing, there's no going back to fix it, there's no second take. I mean, especially when you're talking about weddings, funerals, I mean, sporting events, you only get one shot to get it right. And there's a lot of pressure and excitement and adrenaline that comes with that. But there's also a lot of work after the fact that you don't have to do when you are not doing traditional video production.
Okay, so
Um,
it's not just me, because it's funny. Somebody's like, "You do this thing every week and it's live. Why don't you just make videos?" And part of it is, well, if I do it live and I'm live streaming it to YouTube, I don't have to upload it. I don't have to, if something goes wrong, I don't have to edit it. It's just, it is what it is. And there's that beauty and simplicity of it. So at least I'm
yeah,
not the only one that feels that way.
and it's natural. It's what's happening in the moment. So we were talking about live streaming, and
Yes.
not having to do the editing and the post production, and yeah, I mean, even though I've done a lot of production in my career, it's it's one of those that when you go down that rabbit hole, that creative rabbit hole, it's amazing. And I love being able to spend hours on something and then seeing a final product come to fruition. But it's a lot of work. And when you're starting a business, I learned early on from Seth Godin, you're either an entrepreneur or you're a freelancer. And I didn't want to be the freelancer. I wanted to be the entrepreneur. I didn't want to be the one having to do the work and go find the business. And so I realized that the less of the work I had to do after the fact, the more I could focus on growing the business. And so while I love live streaming, and that was certainly the bulk of my business in its first 2 years,
Yeah.
well, as things normalized and as things,
Especially here in Florida. Like we
yeah,
opened up, like people, I'm talking to people in Australia and they're like, we're just now getting up. I'm like, we had the Super Bowl, like Super Bowl normal in 2021, January, February, whatever. I'm like,
yeah.
Florida, we were like the trendsetters when it came to opening back up. I
Well,
think
and
we were beating everybody in the world.
you're absolutely right. And it's almost like living on a different planet, really, because we were already doing so much that others, were not able to do. But again, those type of circumstances were what brought me business, because we had family members that couldn't travel to attend weddings or events. And so they would hire me to broadcast these events for them because they weren't able to be there. And oftentimes it was grandparents or parents or best men and bridesmaids and maid of honors, that because of the travel restrictions, because of all the COVID testing, they couldn't make it.
Yeah.
And so those opportunities created a demand for the type of services I was providing. And to get back to the question, yeah, I love doing the live streaming. But as things normalized and there was less demand for the live streaming, I've had to pivot and more towards the podcast production of my business. Not only because there's more demand there now presently than there is for live streaming, but also because the it's typically in most cases recurring revenue.
Because they're
You
doing
know,
it on a consistent basis. That
exactly.
makes total sense. When it
Nobody's
comes to
doing
leveraging, do you want to do one wedding?
right.
Or do you want to do a podcast, one time sell versus a weekly or bi-weekly or bi-monthly or whatever?
Sure. And while, I certainly make more off of a singular live streaming event, but the recurring revenue is really what any business, especially in today's economy, really thrives off of. And we're seeing a lot of businesses go to subscription models, which, again, isn't anything new. It's just a new name for it. Because, any consistent client that comes to you month after month is basically a subscription. And so my podcast clients, I love because I get to see them, every week in most cases. And it's recurring revenue for my business. And so it's a much more stable income versus the event industry, which, again, one of the things I don't like about the event industry, even though I've been in it for over 20 years, is that you're constantly chasing the next event. You're constantly looking for those next opportunities.
Yeah.
But there are other opportunities. I've been working with Gaither High School now for 4 years. I've live streamed concerts for them and award shows and things like that. So there's been some of those relationships that have grown into recurring opportunities as well, even on the live streaming side. But really, if it hadn't been for the podcasting side of my business, which, as you know, is just an incredible marketing vehicle when done correctly.
I like that.
The
The when done correctly, that makes a huge
that's it.
difference.
Yeah. And because it's not simply just turning on a camera and putting it out there. There's a lot of work that has to be done after the fact, to really make it effective for whatever your goals might be, whether it's generating business or whether it's growing an organization or just creating awareness.
So you just mentioned generating business, and we're all about generating business at Asentiv. So I'm curious, how do you generate most of your business?
Yeah, I think I pride myself in doing it the more old school way. I like networking, huge believer in networking. One of those things where I think they should teach it in college. It's
100%, I concur and agree.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate to have friends who own networking organizations or chair networking organizations. And so I certainly keep tabs on what they're doing. And
Now,
I,
this
I
doesn't apply to everybody that's watching this, but I'm curious, what are some of your favorite networking organizations in the Tampa Bay area?
Yeah, so I used to do the industry specific ones, when I was certainly, whether it was tech or whether it was in the building industry. When I first moved here to Tampa, I was in the building slash real estate industry. And I think those are key, and it's one of those things again about leveraging, your time and to the right audience. Um, so I don't think there's one specific answer to everybody other than again, you want to go to the smallest barrel with the most fish. And so, now I go into more business oriented organizations. I'll pop into some BNI groups. I do some Hispanic networking organizations, Hispanic chambers, which we're now lucky to have two of here in Tampa Bay. And so, it's one of those, once you tap into those markets, the word kind of gets out that especially when you're able to produce a good product at an affordable cost, the word tends to get out. And so even word of mouth has been very good to me. I mean, I have a client right now that's produced two other clients for me.
Nice.
And so, I make sure to take care of him,
Definitely.
and really kind of go the extra step because he's someone that's also very visible, very active in the community. And I know that when he sees an opportunity for me, he's going to keep me in mind.
So we've talked a lot about how you got here, what you've been doing. What do you see for the next 5 years for you?
My dream really is to have a facility, much like in some ways to a production studio. But I kind of liken it more like when you walk into like a furniture store, like a rooms to go, where
Yeah.
they have these little vignettes that are of different styles and different, kind of trends. And so for me, like my ideal or kind of dream scenario would be to have a facility like that where you have already a lot of kind of set pieces that are already built out for
So
people to be able to
kind of
come
like the
in.
selfie museums,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Yeah.
recording.
And that's actually, that was part of where I got that inspiration. I went to a selfie place here in town, and they have all these different little vignettes where people can take pictures. And to me, when I walked in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like having 20 different sets, production sets.
Uh,
And because I will say one of the challenges has been, well, how do I get my studio to not look the same for every single client? Because they all have their unique audiences,
yeah.
they have their own unique personalities. And I wish that, we're seeing it with the high budget, the high end stuff, that now you have these amazing LED walls that can change, the backgrounds and kind of make you look like you're just about anywhere, in the world or
Yeah.
anywhere that's imaginable. But again, that's one of those things that it's not within the realm of affordability for a lot of your small businesses and nonprofits.
Yeah,
And
I'm sitting here thinking about, because I did a video for a national conference in the Philippines last year, and I'm like, I don't want to stand. They're like, please just stand in front of a green screen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so boring. I'm like, can I stand? I have like different places in my house, and so my videographer came over, and we used like 5 different corners because I'm like,
yeah,
the audience doesn't want to look at me standing in place for I mean, it was a 35-minute presentation. I'm like, they don't want to see that. I'm like,
That's
that's so
right.
boring. I
Well,
love
and
the idea.
Well, and the video component of even this conversation is a perfect example. I mean, whether it's Zoom or Teams or whatever conferencing platform you're using, they all use these virtual backgrounds. Why? Well, because people want something that's a little more interesting than maybe a bedroom or a home office or even a blank cubicle, whatever you may be
Yeah.
working from.
Most people probably don't have like a built-in Zoom corner that they've created.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people.
Well, and I love that the technology has given us the flexibility too to be able to change
Yes.
it. And so when I actually do TV interviews on a regular basis, I actually will change my background to look like I'm in a TV studio,
Oh, nice.
and it looks like I'm in like a newsroom. And so it gives it a little bit more of a professional look that's more consistent with what that audience is looking for. And so that's what I want to bring, to my business. And I'm always, of course, with technology, as we were talking before we started, it's a constant investment in getting better equipment, and providing a better product. But I also want to continue to look for opportunities to bring exposure to organizations and events that need it, that where there is that opportunity. And so I'm slowly building relationships with the Hillsborough County high school basketball scene, because I work with a nonprofit called the Skill Center, and they're amazing. They're about to open a $25 million facility in East Tampa. I was
So tell me a
certainly
little bit about what they do.
Yeah, so the Skill Center is led by Celeste Roberts. She's an amazing CEO, and the entire team is just an incredible number of individuals who basically discovered that through sports, and now they've of course expanded that into other realms other than sports, but that they could teach students the skills that they need to be ready for real life. And so, of course, from the sports side, teamwork, leadership, things like that. But now they've since spun off to where they're teaching entrepreneurship,
Mm.
how to start a business, how to run a business, and even within sports, exposing them to roles within sports organizations that go beyond being the athlete. Because, in our culture, we're hyper focused on the stars of any given sport or any given industry. Well, there are hundreds or thousands of people that are
Behind.
doing a lot of other types of jobs behind them.
Yeah.
And so whether it's video production, radio production, marketing, sales, even again operations. I mean, there's so many roles that can be filled that we want to expose kids to, and I believe that because that exposure was what changed my life. I had a teacher in high school that approached me, and she said that she thought I had a great voice and spoke well, and would I be interested in doing a teen radio show that was being put on by a nonprofit. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And it changed my life. From that moment on, I set out to go into broadcasting. And that became my first career. But that also spun off into a lot of other amazing opportunities. And so my relationship with them is producing a weekly podcast for them where they talk about high school basketball, and their goal is to see that these kids stay focused on their academics and they understand the importance of academics beyond just being able to qualify to be on the team,
Yeah.
and also to get them recruited, making sure that they're prepared to get recruited by these schools at any level. Because what I also appreciate is that they say, well, Division 1 may not be for you, and it's not certainly not for everybody. There's
Yeah.
amazing Divisions 2 schools, there's amazing HBCUs, there's so many other opportunities out there that again kids aren't always exposed to. And so the Skills Center again, has worked incredibly hard over the past number of years to grow like any nonprofit wants to do and touch the lives of many children in our county. And they had this vision to have their own facility. And it's coming to fruition. It's a $25 million facility that's going to open in East Tampa. And from there, they're going to have, again, an expansion of programs that are going to expose them to much more than just sports, but like I said, entrepreneurism, tech, and life skills in general that are going to prepare these kids for success.
Well, I have never heard of that before, but I'm super excited. My husband played basketball in Plant City.
Cool.
He almost went D1, but he went D2. So I'm thinking
That's
like
great.
he could be perfect to have some, and now he's an entrepreneur. So it sounds like it's a good alignment of
You would
what
love these guys.
he's done. Yeah, I'll have to put him on the list to create that introduction.
Absolutely. And I would highly recommend you reach out to Celeste Roberts and the team over at the Skill Center, because their story is also amazing. And what they have coming is just going to be just the lives that they're going to touch with this new facility is going to be unbelievable.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And this has all been amazing. Like I have so many more questions I want to ask, that we're reaching the end of our time. So I do want to pose two final questions to you. Not that we have to be one word answers. We've talked a lot about the business, though it's morphed into some also of what you do for the community. But I am dying to know what you do for fun, because my goal is help people have more money, more time, and more fun. So I always want to touch on, what do we want for fun? What is fun for you?
Well, that was also part of my goal with, how I structured my business. I wanted to do things that I thought were fun. I mean, again, from the time I was like 8, 10 years old, I was playing around with video cameras, and, I was recording myself on cassettes, making pretend, I was on the radio. And so I love doing voiceover work, and I love, doing my own podcasts, and I love helping other people, create content. And I really, I mean, I love it. It's just a lot of fun for me. And I've been incredibly fortunate to fall into many roles that many would do for free. I would even do for free, but as a bonus, they do pay me.
We have to, put food on the table and a roof over our head.
And really, that is a blessing that I think not many countries can offer. That's one of those factors where I think the United States is unique, in the sense that really creating that opportunity that we can pursue our dreams and still provide for our families. I love going to concerts. I love going to events in general. I'll kind of go to just about any kind of event and knowing the amount of work that goes into putting on events. But certainly music is really music.
Who are some of your favorite musicians? What kind of flavor do you like?
So I do DJ also,
again, you probably know lots of it.
So I do love all kinds of music. I'm an 80s, 90s hip hop kid, but my favorite artist is John Mayer. And then when it comes to karaoke, I'm an old soul. I sing Sinatra and Tony Bennett and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of musically, all over the place, but performing arts, are really, have a really soft spot in my heart. And in fact, I just took my daughter, who's 7. I took her to her first musical. We went to see Annie at the Straz Center, and she is equally as in love with music and performing arts as I am. And so I'm excited to see that. And for me, that's my fun these days. I love living vicariously through her and exposing her to as many experiences as possible. And I work hard so that we can both have fun.
I like it. Have you ever heard of pigeons playing ping pong?
No. But can I live stream it?
Well, it's a band.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm so musically not, like, they drag me to concerts, but I've fallen in love with this band, Pigeons Playing Ping Pong. They're kind of funk. I guess is there, I don't know. I'm not into music. And so I'm just always
Did you
wondering.
say funk or punk?
Funk.
Okay, I
They're
like it.
they're a
Yeah.
jam band.
Okay, yeah.
I we've seen them several times, several different places. I am so not into music, but that's like kind of my go-to. So it's a fun one. So I'm always asking when people are like into music, I'm like, I know
Right.
a band that I really like.
I will check them out. Yeah. And I will return the favor by putting you onto Yellow Dub Marine. So like submarine, but with a D at the beginning instead of the
Hmm.
S. Yellow Dub Marine is actually a dub or reggae band that does only Beatles covers.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a perfect listen to in the pool
Yeah,
in Florida Saturday afternoon.
I've
Oh,
seen them twice. They're actually from Maryland, I believe, but I've seen them twice here in town, and they're just so much fun. And their arrangements and talent is fantastic. And so
I'm
that's a fun listen.
I'm gonna go check them out after we
Yeah.
get done. But before I do, you mentioned you had a podcast, so it's time for this shameless plug of what
Yeah.
is your podcast and where can we find it?
All right. So in full disclosure, it is political.
Oh,
And
okay.
so
Thank you for the disclosure.
yeah, I'll preface it with that. But you know, I do have people of all political persuasions on the show. I'm also that honestly is also kind of a hobby of mine. Is I like to be active in politics, and as you probably saw in my LinkedIn, you know, it's also been a smattering of my career as well. I've had some amazing experiences in politics as well. And so yeah, I like to it's I'm in right now it's moving around a little bit schedule wise, but it's more or less a weekly podcast, just talking about the news of the week, deconstructing it, you know, from kind of a fresh perspective. You know, it's myself, and I usually like to have at least two or three other people on there with me, so it's not a talking head type show either. And like I said, you know, I've had Democrats, libertarians, independents on the show. You know, it's not combative, you know, which I think is healthy. You know,
Nice.
we need to reach a point in our politics where we can have dialogue without getting angry and fighting with each other.
Yes.
So
Could
I
you
didn't even
could you tell
mention the
us the name
name.
of it?
No.
Okay.
so I had the epiphany about 10 years ago, and it's called the yard sign. And luckily, nobody had snatched up the URL or the name for the show, and so it's the yard sign. Very easy to find on all major social media and podcast platforms. We've been doing it for years, so there's plenty of content to listen to. But you know, it is timely. Like I said, we try to do the show on a weekly basis, and you know, of course, you know, coming into an election year, I mean, it couldn't be a better time to check us out.
Awesome. And speaking of finding you, if people are interested in learning more about whether they want you to help with their podcast or live stream, how can we find you if we want to hire you?
Absolutely. Well, I think you know, you said it earlier. LinkedIn's a great way. You know, I don't post much on there, but I do check it pretty regularly. I'm more of a sharer on LinkedIn. You know, I do like to celebrate other people's accomplishments and share what they're working on and that sort of thing. My LinkedIn persona, I would say, is very different than maybe my other social media profiles. But professionally, I think, you know, that would be the best way. Or, you know, my email address is Johnny, Jonny, at falkenbergproductions.com. Or if you go to falkenbergproductions.com, it's also going to kind of point you to where, but any of this, I'm pretty easy to find all over the internet. And so I certainly welcome to connect with anyone and everyone.
Excellent. Now, my last question.
Mhm.
So I hate to end this interview, but that is how life works.
So I can
I'm
do it again
curious,
some other time.
what new things you have coming up? What's exciting coming up in your world? What's going on?
Yeah, well, like I said, they're hopefully going to be streaming under my DBA of Florida Athletics Network on YouTube. A lot more high school and semi-pro sporting events. I'm working on I've been working with Tampa Catholic, and
Mm,
if you go to their YouTube channel, a lot of their sporting events that have been live streamed have been done by my company.
nice.
And to, like I said, Florida Athletics Network, I'm hoping to bring more events like high school basketball, and continue to give these schools and these kids an opportunity at exposure, so that they can hopefully get recruited, get continue on not only their professional career but their educational career as well. And on the personal front, as some of you might have noticed, I recently joined the Lakeland Flying Tigers as their public address announcer. And so they are the minor A League team for the Detroit Tigers, playing out of Joker Martin Stadium in Lakeland. And so if all goes well, I'll also get to do Detroit Tigers spring training next season, which would be a dream come true for me.
Is the
Something
hope one day to move from the minors to the majors?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing collegiate sports for many years. I started being a public address announcer in college, 20 years ago, and from that day on, that was the goal, to end up with a professional sports team. And so I'm about a hair away from accomplishing that. And so even if I get to do spring training, that would certainly be just another amazing accomplishment for me. And as I said before, what could be better than to be getting paid to watch baseball, 4 or 5 days a week? And so I get to do that as a
It's the
public address
hardships of
announcer.
life. I
I
have to be
know. I
paid
mean,
to watch sports.
exactly. Yeah. And so, all right. So I got to talk every few minutes, I guess, but, public address announcing has been also a passion of mine, and something that I've been doing for a long time. And to, now kind of see that side of my life kind of have momentum again is something I wasn't expecting. But bring it on. I'm ready.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so very much for your time telling us all about your business, your life, what you've got going on. It has been phenomenal. Y'all
Thank
be
you.
sure to
Thank you
check them
so
out
much
on
for the
LinkedIn.
opportunity.
If you're okay with the political podcast, check out the podcast for sure. And
Yeah,
we look forward to talking to you again soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for watching. Your next interview will be coming to you soon. Happy networking, y'all.